And welcome to another episode of CAS Minute, where today we're going to talk about the client onboarding experience. So, onboarding is always one of the most challenging parts of any client relationship as you get to know them, the history of their accounting, their processes, and you're developing your own processes in order to help them moving forward. Now, ideally, in the scoping process, we've gathered enough information to drive some degree of expectation as it relates to the onboarding experience. That being said, there's always something under the covers once you get on board. So, what elements of the onboarding process do we really need to make sure are really crisp when we bring clients on board? I like to set expectations on what meetings are we going to have over the course of the next 4, maybe 12 weeks to ensure that you're set up for success in this relationship moving forward. Ideally, we have a cadence to say, hey, in this meeting, we're going to walk through the organizational structure. In this meeting, we're going to walk through the revenue model. In this meeting, we're going to walk through your current processes. So developing a standardization around how you gather information from your clients. Yes, you need a portal, you need a document management system to easily request and gather documents. But I'm talking about the meeting cadence with the client. How do you set up expectations for a client there? If you don't know how long an onboarding experience is going to take, I would say at the very least, lay out the expectations relative to your client's time commitment. If your client knows how much time that's going to be required of them during this onboarding process, at least from a meeting perspective, you're already setting yourself up for success. Now, one thing that's hard is communicating, when does onboarding end? When are we actually through this and into a cadence that exists moving forward? So, because you may not know specifically, because it's not a precise date in time, what you want to do is gear more of your communication towards the progress that you're making in these meetings that you're having on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, and then start to walk through, as we have these meetings, here's our anticipated timeline for resolution of perhaps it's cleanup work, perhaps it's getting to know the business and onboarding, perhaps it's getting your team set up and trained on the systems in order to operate effectively in cadence. So you need to have a meeting cadence set up really intentionally to communicate to the client what to expect. On the internal side of things, we need to make sure that we're utilizing the right tools for data collection, like I mentioned, a portal, and then management of meetings and the subsequent notes that are taken from that information gathering step with the client. So ideally, we've got a situation where we've got data coming in from meetings that is spoken via our clients, that is captured, that we don't have to go back to our clients again in order to ask the same information, in order to ask the same question again later. That's the number one thing that will drive your clients absolutely nuts, is if you walk through information during the onboarding process and then a month later, your team asks that same question again. So to the extent possible, ensure that the information that you're collecting in these meetings is being transferred over to your CRM, to your workflow management system, to the teams that require that work in order to get familiar with the client. So technology is a big part of that. You could use tools like Fireflies or Fathom or Supernormal in order to take notes. That's one element of doing it, but oftentimes we're scribbling down notes on pen and paper, we're scribbling down notes on the computer, and so we just need to make sure we're consolidating that on the back end. There's also been a lot of conversation around client relationship managers. Is there somebody that's running point on the communication that's occurring throughout onboarding? Is one person in charge of that in order to continue maintaining and setting expectations with the client? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's a client relationship manager or perhaps it's an engagement manager that's doing this, but you need to ensure that there are rhythms of the communication back to the client in order to set those expectations. You're getting the feeling here that it's all about expectation setting and onboarding because it's such a challenging environment. It's a challenging time to get to know your clients. So knowing that this is going to be the heaviest volume of work between you and your client, you need to make sure that you are adequately communicating expectations to a client. And I would also say gathering feedback from them along the way. There's a tool called testimonial.to that does a really good job of sending out requests in order to gather feedback from a video or written perspective that then can port directly over to your website or port directly into an internal system to provide feedback to the team. A couple of ways that you can do that. So all of this is through the lens of trying to develop a strong relationship from the beginning, and onboarding needs to be done well. I hope that's helpful. Till next time.